So good morning, everyone, and welcome to You in Your Home with myself, Rashid and Lauren. I'm delighted that Sylvain, the chair of maintenance, is here as well. Good morning, Sylvain.
Good morning.
So shall we dive in? Shall we dive straight in then, Sylvain? What I'm going to do is that fantastic. So let's start off by talking about some of the things that are your responsibility and the things that are BHC's responsibility. And Sylvain, I wonder if you want to kind of kick us off by, as we can see this list up here, I wonder if you might want to just briefly give us this list of what's BHC's responsibility and then what's our responsibility as a tenant.
Okay, well, so going through that list, you've got the city, and just it's really about the upkeep of the building, the external repairs, the painting, if your house is painted on the outside. We look at maybe the electrics. Last few years, we've been really looking at all the windows in our properties, making them, converting them into double glazed windows wherever it was possible. Some areas are a bit more tricky because they're in a conservation area, but now we've come up with a good solution, which is to have glazing inside, internal glazing, and yeah, looking at the boilers, the heating, the electric, well, sometimes need to be overhauled because they're a bit out of date. So it's all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't cover internal reparation. It's just really looking after the structure of the building, making sure the roof is watertight, all those kind of things.
Got you. And then, and Sylvain, just before you leave that bit, so with the cyclical bit, for people who are newer to that, am I right that what we do is that we look at those core things, you know, the overall, you know, the structural side of the business and any significant things. On average, it's about every 4 to 5 years we try that by the time we get round to everybody's home.
Yes, I think that's about right. Yeah, so it's not an annual thing. Some people might have been expecting to hear that. No, it's might even, yeah, maybe 5 or 6 years. Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but by the time we've done all the properties, so we'll do typically 5 or 6 properties in 1 year, because we could possibly do more, but the problem is because a lot of it is external repairs, such as painting, for example, and roofs, we often have to wait for the weather to be okay. So typically the cyclical repairs don't really happen after autumn. We start again maybe, you know, April, May, sometimes when it starts to get a bit better weather and people can work outside.
Fantastic. Yeah. And that leads us on to then, so we've talked about the BHC responsibility, the cyclical, roofs, major external repairs, boilers, heaters and electrics and things like that. And then what we've got this list is here, what's our responsibility? And I wanted to just kick off and then hand over to you, Sylvain, to put this into context. So what we've got here is that the decoration of the house, the decoration of the house, the upkeep and the internal fabric of your home, and of course your belongings, your furniture and your own home insurance. Do you want to just bring this to life and just tell us a little bit about this? Because I know you often make the point about there's lots of things that we could avoid having to do if we take care of our homes.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, the internal decoration, all of that is up to us to keep up. But the really important thing is the upkeep. And really, as I said a bit earlier before the meeting when we were having a lot of chat, if I take windows for example, as an example, you know, if you have got a wooden sash window still, and it has got rotten, we have to come in and either replace the whole thing or maybe cut out a little part of it and replace that part, all of which is expensive. But let's just say you noticed it was getting damp in a corner. It might have been easier for someone to come in and just chip away a little bit and see what the problem was, fix that problem, stop it from getting worse. But even better is if you have condensation around your window, you daily wipe it away and then you prevent that from happening. So it's prevention rather than cure, and that goes for everything around the house. If you see a little dripping tap, maybe it's something that you can fix because you know how to do it. There are loads of videos on how to do it. It's not that complicated. But if you can't, then you tell us and we come and fix it. And a dripping tap is very easy to fix, as opposed to a major leak further down the line, which might take out your downstairs neighbor's ceiling.
That's really,
So those are the things that we do every day. Just keep an eye out for things if something's not quite right. And also, even if it's not really a problem and you thought it was, you tell us about it, or call Tim, for example. He'll come and have a look and say, oh, that's nothing, don't worry, we'll sort that out tomorrow. Or he might say, oh, wow, this is showing there's a bigger problem. So it's about communication and just looking at all the little areas in your house that could potentially turn into something more problematic.
Fantastic. And that leads us nicely to that. If there's a problem, report it swiftly, as you said, to the maintenance officer, who is currently Tim. We put in here in another important message, which is, after sometimes when people have been with BHC for a while, they might be familiar with some of our main contractors. Do not call a contractor direct and report it to either email, and we've got an updated email, which is maintenance@brixtonhousing.coop, or call and so on, because otherwise we may well be charged for that call out. So do not go straight to the contractors. I think that's really important, isn't it, to emphasize, Silva?
Absolutely, yeah. Any repairs should be authorized. Well, it depends on the nature of the repair. Let's say it's just a little thing, then Tim will authorize it and we'll get someone to come around and fix it. But if it's a bigger problem and maybe end up potentially be quite costly, then that will go to the maintenance committee for decision. And we act as quickly as possible. We have monthly meetings, so sometimes things can drag on a little bit, but if it's something really urgent, then Tim will email the maintenance committee and we'll all make a decision there and then, or over a couple, as quickly as possible, basically.
Brilliant. And that leads us nicely to just briefly touch on what to do in an emergency. So there may well be those emergencies, something really major has happened, might be a very significant leak or something that you're concerned about. Call the office straight away and select the option, which I think is currently option 2 for Tim. Now, if there's a gas emergency, for gas emergencies only, I think we currently call cruisers. If it's other emergencies, Julie and James, only in those emergencies now. And it's worth us stressing, of course, if there are the one exception for that is certain types of utility emergencies. If the gas leak, if you're smelling gas, ring the gas. This is the British Gas 24-hour helpline. If there's water leaks and so on, major water leaks and so on, call Thames Water on their 24-hour number, and electricity and so on. So smelling gas, call that number. Don't think twice, ring those numbers really importantly. I don't know if there's anything you want to say there, Silva, and just to underscore that it's so important.
No, that is really, really important, because that can lead to major accidents, big disasters. If there's gas leak, is very dangerous. I would definitely follow Rashid's advice on that. But once you've done that, I would also call the co-op office to let them know what's happened. But yeah, they would be the first people to call, definitely.
Excellent. So let's talk about, there are some key things, aren't there, Silva, that we should all know. And I must admit that in the past, where they are, there have been all sorts of key things in our house that we should all know when we move into our house. So what we've got here is with water, there's a stopcock valve which regulates the water flow into the house and so on. That's going to be really important. We need to know where that is. And there's a fuse box which controls the electricity, where we should know what that does. Do you want to, Sylvain, just to briefly talk us through this? We don't need to be experts on this, but these are key things where we should know where they are, right?
Yeah, and it's often, it can be quite tricky, because in my apartment, our flat, the stopcock is just by the entrance of inside the communal hallway. And it's really easy to find it. It's just by the door. Some properties, the stopcock will be inside the property, and it might be hidden away in some little cupboard, but it's usually near a door, near the front door of the flat, or near the front door of the communal hallway, somewhere. I mean, it should be quite obvious to find it. And there are different types, but most of them are like the ones you have photographed.
They'll look like that.
Yeah,
I was just going to ask, just for the purpose of this recording, if our two the members who are here. Do you both know where the stopcock valves are in your house? I guess it's more relevant at the moment for yourself, Manu, but have you all looked? Because it took me a while to know where mine was in my house.
Yeah, I know where my fuse box is, and I think the stopcock valve is in the same place, but actually I can't visualize it. But I'll look definitely off this meeting to make sure.
Yeah,
yeah. And I mean, so as you explained, what it is it cuts off the water supply to the property. So if you've got a major leak, you turn that off. That's the first thing you do. Then you stop the damage from spreading. Also worth saying that some stopcocks are actually located outside of the building, and I believe we're not really supposed to touch those.
That's right. Am I right, Sylvain, that often there's the one that's unique to your house, which controls all stuff in your house, and then very often there will be one. I think that there's one for me kind of just outside that, because there's two houses here, that often is more for, it might well be for a couple of properties or a number of properties, which are the ones.
Those ones are for the water board to fiddle with. So they will cut off the whole, the whole building block. But yes, it's worth finding out, because I believe that in some cases there's one stopcock for multiple properties, and if you have to turn off the water because you've got a major leak, then you also need to tell your neighbors. But I think in most cases our properties have their own individual ones, so it's important to find out where it is. It's important to turn it off if you're going away for any length of time, for a week or something. If you're going for a couple of days, that's okay. But it's just in case something develops a leak, or a pipe bursts in the winter. Sometimes they freeze. Things like that can happen. And if you're away for a few weeks, then that could cause a lot of damage. So it's worth turning off when you leave for a long time. And I think I've covered everything with that. Got any questions?
The only thing I was going to ask, first of all, Sylvain, was that this is the kind of thing, if you really are struggling with it, or we might have some members who may have more mobility or other challenges, by all means, ask the housing the maintenance worker, who might well be able to help you just find it if you're having problems or whatever. Tim is usually good, isn't it? You could perhaps ask if you're struggling, or if you've had work being done. Sometimes it's worth then noticing. Often those are the times when you can notice. So sometimes when I've had, for example, people come into my house and I've said to them, who are looking at the stopcock or whatever, I've said, oh, is it here? And getting them to show me how to turn it on and off. So taking that curious interest. And I don't know, Martin, if you just had your hand up there, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
No, I was just touching my eye. No. I didn't have a question, because I know where everything in our flat is, because I'm responsible for the flat for a long time. So I know that the one for flat is in the hallway, but then as well in the past when we had the kitchen redone. So I know that on the pavement we've got like the 3 metal, things that they can stop the water for each flat. So a fuse box is above the door. So,
Well, that's great news. And anything you wanted to say, Sylvain, about then the fuse box? You want to just briefly talk us through that?
Yeah, I just remember there's one tiny other thing about the stopcock valves, is that when you turn them off or back on, never turn them off when you're turning them off, turn the little handle until you can hear the water stop flowing, but don't force it either way. Don't force it all the way in or all the way out, because that damages the thread inside, and then eventually that will actually cause a leak as well. So it's just sometimes though they're quite stiff because they haven't been open for a long time. So I might use a pair of pliers, or maybe put a little bit of WD-40 on it or something if you haven't used it for a very long time. But yeah, never force them in or out is also a good tip, because that will damage them. And then, so moving on to the fuse box, what were you going to ask me? Sorry.
If you want to just tell us, just in a sentence, anything you want to say about them, about where you're likely to find them, and anything else you want to just mention about them.
Okay, so the fuse box, just, you know, in case there are some people who are watching this who've never really known what they were, etc., they control all the different circuits of the house. And when you look at them, you will see lots of switches, and they have different numbers above them, which shows how strong the current is going through that fuse. So the higher the current will be things like your cookers, washing machines that use a lot of electricity. And then the lower current one, like maybe it will say 10A or something like that, that's probably more like light circuits, things like that. They usually they should be labeled as well, as they are on the picture on the right shows some writing. So the electrician should label what they are, like lights first floor, lights ground floor, that kind of thing. And what happens is, if there's a problem with any of your electrical circuits, that fuse will jump. So the little knob will go down, and then maybe your lights will go off, or so your cooker will go off. And then you go to the fuse box, which is usually located, well, it will always be located in some kind of cupboard in the house somewhere. It's always hidden away. Usually there's a cover in front of it, and they are very often in high places, you know, to prevent children from getting to them. So they're basically tucked away somewhere safe. And there's usually a cover in front, so you open that, and then you will see one of the switches. For example, if you look at the one on the right there, the image on the right, there's a blue one that's on the off position. So that's just jumped. That circuit's just jumped. There's been a little malfunction somewhere. You can usually switch it back on, and I mean, you can switch it back on, and it will usually stay up, and then your lights or whatever comes back on. However, if it keeps going down, it means there's a big problem somewhere, and then you need to call maintenance officer again and tell them what the problem is, and they'll get someone round to have a look at it.
That's brilliant. I think
yeah, that's basically what they are, what they do.
That's so useful, Sylvan. I was just going to only add one thing that I'd noticed, that with these, it's really important to when you know where they are, do not have too much stuff that is stopping the way to get there. So for example, if the lights have gone off and you're having to go through stuff, so where I used to live, you'd have to go through, it's downstairs, and you'd have to go through the bedroom, and then you'd have to go through a little kind of walking, and then it was around the corner. So if you've got loads of boxes and so on, you could potentially do yourself an injury or what have you. So try and keep the path to them clear, or even if they're in a box, don't have too much stuff that don't really, you should have it so you can clearly see it. So just in case, because last thing you want is when, let's say, all the lights have gone off, for you to be really struggling to find it, or for you to do yourself any harm.
Yeah, and equally, don't completely stuff the cupboard that they're in with loads of boxes, because if you need quick access to them, you don't want to be up a ladder trying to take out boxes and then trying, you know, so it's important to keep it clear as well.
Brilliant. Let's move on to the one that, especially seasonally, we're lucky we're recording this when it's just becoming spring, but the one that's really important, isn't it? Heating your home, and radiators and boilers. So we're going to start off by talking a little bit about radiators. And Sylvan, it's worth us adding, isn't there, that if people are wanting to know more about how to bleed the radiators, which I know you'll say a word about, we have got a separate video where you're bleeding a radiator, which is available on our YouTube channel. But do you want to just tell us a little bit about what we mean by bleeding the radiators, and what all of that is about?
Yeah, so radiators on the central heating system obviously work by pumping hot water through the radiator. It just goes through all the different channels inside and comes out the other side, and then it gets circulated around the house. And occasionally you get air that gets into the system, and so where there is air, the air will rise to the top of the radiator, and your radiator won't be heating the place, your house, as efficiently as it should. And the way you can tell is you go around your house when the heating is on, you put your hand on the radiators, and you will feel that some of them are quite cool or even cold to the touch at the top, but they're warm on the bottom. That's a clear indication that you've got air at the top of the radiator. It's not filling up with water. So what you need to do is you need to bleed the radiator. And what that is, if you look at the image there of the radiator, you've got that little circle near the top.
Found one. And I found one also that, oh yeah, there's a circle by the top. I beg your pardon. Yeah.
Yeah, so by the top, yeah, that's it. Yeah, so up there, usually on most radiators, you have a little valve like that, a little opening. And you need one of the keys that Rashid just showed you, or also on the image there, you've got some. These are really easy to find from a hardware shop. They're probably about 20p. So it's not like a special key that only plumbers have. It's very easy to get hold of. And what you do is, so like in the instructions there, you turn off your heating, you find the valves. Always have maybe some kind of flat, like a plate or something on the bottom with maybe also I get a towel ready because a little bit of water comes out. So you then turn that, put that little key in the top there, you turn it, and you will hear some air hissing out of the radiator, which is great. And then eventually you get a little bit of water dripping out, and that's when you know that the water's reached the top again. So you leave the water to drip out a little tiny bit, and then close it, and then now your radiator's filled to the top. Now it says repeat this process on all the radiators in the house. If you have lots of air in your system, one or more of your radiators will have this problem. So the way to do it is you always start from the radiator furthest away from the boiler. If you have a property on multiple floors, you start on the ground floor, on the lowest floor, let's say. So so what I mean is, if you're on the first and second floor, start on the lowest floor of your property. And on the lowest floor of your property, start on the radiator that's furthest away from the boiler, and then move to all the radiators as you get closer to the boiler, and then repeat the process on the second floor or the other floors. Okay, so every time start from the one that's furthest away from the boiler, move towards the boiler, and then move up a floor.
Wonderful. That's so useful. And I guess sometimes the last point here, Sylvain, is saying that, which is talking about checking the boiler's pressures. If problems persist, it might well be that there's a boiler challenge, and that leads us nicely to talk a little bit about boilers. Do you want to again talk us through the briefly tell us what the boiler does, and then look at this slide here around if the people are finding that their radiators are still not working?
Yeah, so obviously the boiler is heating up the water with a gas flame, and it circulates water through it. It's got little coils inside, so it's heating up the water inside and then sending it to the radiators, and there's it's a closed system, so it's going round and round. Sometimes you get a little bit of water leaking out somewhere, and that happens once a year, or every now and again. You should check the pressure on your boiler. Now, all boilers, we have a few different makes, and they have slightly different ways of showing it. But if you have your instruction manual, it'll be in there. If you don't, then you can look online. Just Google the make and model of your boiler, and you get all sorts of great, very useful videos on YouTube on how to top up the pressure. And that just means basically.
Yeah,
sorry.
So sorry to interrupt you, Sylvain. I was just going to say that we've got, again, on our YouTube channel, there's a very basic video where we first of all in situ are showing a boiler, and as you say that they're all different, and then as you were saying there, that very often if you're wanting to do something like to top them up, often on YouTube there are videos that are very specific to the make of that video. And I would just add, Sylvain, and I wonder your thoughts on it, if you are going to look for videos on YouTube to find out, to look at the pressure, or how to top the boiler up if the pressure is too low, what have you. First of all, see if you can find the video via the make of that particular company. Sometimes the company themselves will have will have their own video, and if not, sometimes you can see that they're clearly experienced engineers, rather than just Joe Bloggs, ideally. You want to try and find if it's there one by the company itself. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Yes, they often will have one of their own engineers showing on one of their own, boilers. Yeah, that's a lot better. But yeah, often also you can also see people who are clearly plumbers, so yeah, so it's not as daunting as it might seem. It's a lot easier than you think. Sometimes it's just a matter of turning a little valve until the water goes back in and the pressure goes up, and that's it. It's worth doing that at least once a year, or if you just checking every couple of months just to see if the pressure is still correct. If you find that you're having to top up really regularly, then it means there's an issue with your boiler. It might be all sorts of things that could have gone wrong. So then I think at that point it's worth telling the maintenance worker that there's an issue, because it could also indicate that you've got a leak somewhere in your house that you may not be able to see because the pipes are obviously going on the floor, and then a year down the line that tiny leak in the pipe bursts into a full-on big problem. So sometimes that can indicate that there are things that could be potentially a big problem ahead of time. So,
and just one last tip here. I mean, one thing that I've done, Sylvain, is that sometimes, and boilers, because they all do look straightforward. For example, topping up. If we look at these different makes here, sometimes that thing about topping them up. I used to have a boiler that looks like the one in this middle picture, and all you needed to do was kind of lift that valve and to let more. To kind of top it up and then to close it back again. Some are more kind of complicated. One of the things that I've done in the past is when an engineer comes around for the annual service, I'll often get them to just show me how do I top this up and so on. So it's really worth, I'd say to anyone, if somebody is coming in, those times it can be a good opportunity just to give yourself a little bit of an education on how the thing works, and they'll usually be more than happy to show you if you're like me and you want to kind of get that right. It can be a good opportunity to just become really familiar with your boiler.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Brilliant. So let's then talk about, and you touched on some of this. So we've talked about some of the fundamentals, what the BHC will do, what's our responsibility as a tenant, some of the big ones that come up all the time, bleeding your radiators, and understanding the boilers and understanding where the stopcock is and where the fuse box is. And we've now got this slide here about some of the things that we could all be doing week to week. So I'm going to kick us off here, Sylvain, and then it would be great to bring you in. So week to week, having that clean and clear and tidy. It was interesting what you had said before. You're making the point about the headaches that we can avoid. And fortunately, I guess that because in BHC Properties, you mentioned before that we are installing double glazing across all of our properties. I used to have one that had single glazing, and I found there that I had to every morning wipe, for example, the windowsill because of the condensation and so on. So things like that, just give things a wipe down and clean and tidy to avoid particular mistakes. And I think I learned this one from you, Sylvain, that things like also sinks or whether the things like water, to make sure you've dried things down properly, because that's where you can get leaks. Any things you want to add to that in terms of those things that we could be looking out for in this week to week tidy?
Well, I think really a lot of the damage around the properties that we have are really all to do with moisture and water. Really, that's the main culprit. And so, yeah, like you said, wiping surfaces, for example, in wet areas where you might be cooking or washing up. It's
point number 3 here. So this point number 3. Right.
Yeah, exactly. All around kitchen worktops, every single time I use my sink, I just wipe the back because there's a little bit of water and it just gets in, after a while you get your worktop will start rotting away. It's all about that, but also the just the line above there with the windows. Ventilation is really important. It's important to open and air your property daily, even if it's cold in the winter. People don't want to open it, and that's when you get all this condensation because it's very cold outside, warmer inside. You've got cooking.
You just You just froze just as
all over the place. It just makes your house damp, and you start getting molding.
Oh yeah, you just froze there just temporarily, Sylvain, but I think we've got the essence of that. You'd reminded us about windows, to do that daily ventilation to reduce the condensation, and you'd been talking about the kitchen and the bathroom, drying behind the taps and the tiles and the edges, being mindful about that. And so I think Sylvain's frozen, so I'm just going to talk us through the last few pointers here. So we had radiators, we talked about these, bleeding these regularly with the key, but also sometimes there can be drafts. So check the doormats, and sometimes you might have draft blockers, these kind of fuzzy things, or sometimes that can kind of keep things warm. So those things can be really worth checking. If for example, there's quite a large gap at the bottom of the door and so on. So looking out for things like drafts, and just keeping an eye on other areas in your home, the walls, the doors, the ceilings, and just spot if there are particular issues and particular challenges. Anything else that we've got Manu and Martin here, anything else you want to share, or tips that you want to share with everybody else about what you do? or does that all sound like common sense, or anything else anyone wants to add? I'm going to take that you're both really, really happy.
Very happy.
I think that the one thing is that you should look at, because end of the day, you are looking after your home. It's not that place that you are renting out. And that's what I struggled with my subtenant throughout the time, where obviously we all were raised different way. I was very fortunate that my parents, I know like how to bleed radiators since I was a kid, because like my parents always used the game in order to kind of engage you, like, oh, come and have a look. And then my father was explaining why he is doing X, Y, Z. So for me, living by myself, it was just already, like ingrained, all these, like little thing, how to maintain the property. And then secondly, I always look after the property. Even you don't have to own it, but you are looking after your home. So
I think it's such a powerful point, Martin, that you're making. And in the co-op, it's really important for us to remember that. And it's ironic that in the co-op that technically we're both landlords and tenants at the same time. So it's so important that we just take care. I think that's just such an important point, and just taking time like this just to familiarize ourselves with the house and to learn. So that's a really, really, really powerful point. And I know Sylvain's just about to join us again, and that would have been music. That would have been absolute music to his ears. We'll get him to unmute in a moment and bring that back. So just by way of summarizing that for anybody who's kind of listening, just do that week to week check, doing those cleaning, checking the windows, those surfaces behind in the kitchen and the bathroom, particularly. We've talked about radiators. We touched briefly on drafts. And Sylvain, welcome back. And Martin was just making a really powerful point about, just taking pride in that home and realizing it's kind of that thing about your own responsibility, and doing things very, very, very quickly. So I think that's a lovely moment for us to kind of move on. And there's one other area that sometimes can be one of those things that you'll notice around the house often, which is that classic one about dripping taps. It's a bit like in all those horror movies, there's often a dripping tap, but it doesn't need to be that horrific. But, we've all been in places where the taps are dripping. Do you want to just tell us, Sylvain, in a sentence or two about what that might well be when you notice a dripping tap, because there are these things called washers, and it may well be linked to that.
Yeah, so the parts of the outside parts of a tap are usually always made out of metal, and inside you have little washers that usually rubber, or sometimes you've got these ceramic systems, and they are there to stop the flow of water in and out. And the rubber ones, for example, because they're bendy and soft, then they can have a longer length of life of wear and tear, because you're closing them and opening them, but eventually they do harden and get squashed and start to become brittle.
Ah, so this is what we've got in this picture then. Just for those people who are watching online. So this on the left-hand side, these are the metal types that you're talking about. And then on the right-hand side, if you can see.
Yeah, you've got the rubber ones. Most people, as far as I know, most people will have the standard tap with the rubber washers. The ceramic ones, I'm not that familiar with personally. I don't think I've ever had those. I think someone said to me that they were better, but I'm not sure exactly why. So I won't go too much about them because I'm not 100% sure about them. But most of the time you'll find the rubber washers, and they just sit just below where the tap turns in and out. And yeah, they do get a bit brittle. They get squashed down after lots of use, and so they stop working, and they stop preventing the water from escaping out of the tap. So that's when you have a dripping tap. Sometimes the water is dripping. In most cases, the water will be dripping from the spout itself, just drip, drip, or actually a really fine thread of water, even, in worst cases. Sometimes the water drips from where the tap turns as well. You can see little bits of water just seeping out. It just needs to be changed.
Yeah, and I was going to just dive in there and say that our tips here, Silvana, that if you know what you're doing, because some people are very comfortable, a bit like Martin was saying before about the things, learning stuff around the home. If you know what you're doing, great, go straight ahead and replace the washer. If you don't, again, it might well be worth looking at a reputable YouTube video in terms of how to do that online. There are some really good videos. But again, if you can't do it, and there might be some people who, for mobility or other reasons, may not be able to do it, or then again, then get in touch with the maintenance of it. So obviously, if you can do it, it's great. Anything you wanted to add to that? Because of course, we don't want people, causing more.
Well, no, I mean, so obviously, what we said earlier, we were talking about stopcocks. That would be the first thing to do. You locate the stopcock, you cut the water supply off in your house. Then you can start undoing your tap after watching a video, or if you know what you're doing. Because then if you don't, and you take the tap apart and you haven't turned the water off, you're going to get water hitting your ceiling, and it's not going to stop. So that's very important. You turn off the water at the mains, then you can do the little repair. The washers themselves, there are lots of different sizes, but what you can do is you turn off the water, take your tap apart, have a look at what type of washer you have, put it all back together, go to the shop, in any hardware shop or plumbers merchants, get the right washers, and then you can replace it. It's actually quite simple, but if you're not confident, obviously ask the maintenance officer to come send someone around to do it. But those kind of things where tenants can do those small repairs, it really saves us a lot of money. But it won't save us a lot of money if it turns into a major disaster. So you have to be very careful how you do it.
Wise words. Thanks so much for that, Sylvan. So we've talked about the taps. One other thing that's worth thinking about when we're thinking about our house, and you talked before about things like condensation and air and so on, is air bricks. So we've got a slide here about air bricks. Do you want to, it says here, air bricks, sometimes called air bricks or air vents, are special bricks containing holes that allow air to enter under the floor of the buildings that have suspended floors. Cavity walls also need ventilations to allow airflow that will prevent moisture buildup. So they look like this. So sometimes you see them, that you might be able to see them from the outside of your house. Sometimes you might even see them from the inside of your house. Do you want us to just talk through these and what we need to be mindful of here, Sylvan?
Yeah, I mean, so they do just that. They let air in and out of the property. This is to stop build-up of moisture and condensation in the properties. So if you have them, don't block them up, because I've seen often people have put furniture in front of them, or actually stuck some paper on them. No, they're there to let air in and out of the property, and it's especially important now that our properties have got double glazing, because one of the when we had single panes, they were very drafty, so there was always this airflow going in and out, which was one of the problems, but in a way it also let air in and out of the property. So now that we have better windows is even more important to air the place. So
Brilliant.
that's what those are for.
Brilliant. And we put here some people, I guess one of the reasons that, apart from people not knowing and therefore maybe blocking them up, maybe some people are worried about things like mice and so on getting through. So I know that, and I think you've mentioned before that there are some types of special mesh that you can get that means that the air can still flow through, but hopefully minimize the chance of mice. So don't block them up in the way that you'd flagged up before. There is special mesh that you could inquire about, but these things are really, really important. And there's a point here about mold. It says, for example, e.g. in the bathroom, the kitchen, that might be a telltale sign then if there is excessive moisture. That might point us to other kind of problems again, which presumably, Sylvain, at that point, report it to the maintenance officer.
Yeah, mold is a really, really important thing to try and keep under control. It can be very, very harmful to health, and it shows that there's a problem with airflow. So, which can, in most cases, easily be resolved. But sometimes it's just as simple as just opening the windows every day for 5 minutes. Yeah. Literally, sometimes that's the way to solve it. There's no expensive repair or anything. It's just some people have not opened their window for a year.
And I'm a big fan of this. And I know Martin and I here have had conversations about this thing about opening window. It's just it's actually quite a nice kind of habit. Once you get into it, it's a really kind of good habit. I actually enjoy that habit of opening my window first thing in the morning. So we've talked about these things. And we thought it might be worth just touching on just a few tips around just general home kind of safety. And I'm just going to kick off, Sylvain, but then there might be things that you might be wanting to add. And I know we're lucky enough to have Manu and Martin here. They might want to add or even have questions. Number one, which I'm kind of quite conscious of at the moment, is things like steady steps, beware trips and falls. Do just be mindful if you've got a house where you have got stairs, do just be careful about them, whatever age or whatever stage you are, that they can be dangerous. There can be problems with them. And of course, if you have mobility issues, or if you're an older tenant, or if you, or any other themes, or just be especially careful. But just be mindful with stairs generally. And even if you're a young person in the peak of your health, be mindful with stairs, because you can have some serious falls. And of course, and for some tenants, those could be very, very serious. So just be careful about that. We've also talked about, number two here is about lock and safe. Well, do keep your keys safe and secure for your doors and your windows. Think about where, you might think a lot about, for example, your front door keys. You might want to have a spare set with a trusted neighbor or what have you. And I know that some people have also got have got a set with BHC, but think about things like where your window keys are. You don't want to easily be broken into, so be mindful about that. Strangers, if the doorbell rings, especially in this age that we're in nowadays, do pause before opening the door. If you've got a spy hole, do use one, and use do just look through the window if you can. Don't just open the door. The classic things that we heard when we were growing up, but being mindful about. This is an interesting one, Sylvain. Switch off appliances and beware of wires. I remember once at some point, and I think I'd had some challenges in my house, and I think that somebody came around and they said, wherever you can, do remember to switch off appliances, switch them off at night, switch them off at the mains. I know many of us don't do it, but they can really, really help, and they can avoid things like fires. Smoke alarms, I know you might want to say a word about that. We're lucky BHC fit these, check these routinely. You might need to check the battery. So I wonder if you wanted to say a word about, because I think we've got smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. You just want to say a word about those, Sylvain?
Yeah, so actually, nowadays, most properties will have smoke and fire alarms that are hardwired. So actually checking the batteries is not always an issue for everyone now, because as we do, one of the things we touched on earlier with the cyclical maintenance, for example, if your property doesn't have hardwired alarms yet, then it will have one put in at the next cyclical. And I think we might have put them in everywhere now. I'm not sure, but anyway, it's a requirement. It's a legal requirement now. So checking the batteries is no longer going to be an issue for most people. Okay, but yeah, and they will be put in a strategic place by the electrician. There are regulations as to where they need to be in relation to your cooker and so on.
I can see where mine are right now. I'm just looking up and I can see I've got two. So one must be smoke, and I guess one is the carbon monoxide.
Yeah, because there used to be a time when you could even, I mean, I think you can still do it now. You can call the fire brigade and they'll come round and they'll give you the ones with batteries, or they'll come and replace one, you know, if your batteries have run out and so on. But we're just getting hardwired ones nowadays.
And I guess my one tip, I was just going to say, so sorry, Sylvan, I was just going to say, when you said that, it just made me think, I guess for anyone watching this, maybe the first tip is, again, just notice in your house, just like we've been talking about noticing, where are they? Just get to know where all of things are in your house.
So, because we have got a smoke alarm, so obviously those can be quite annoying sometimes because they're very sensitive, and if you burn your toast, they go off. They've got a button in the middle of them, usually somewhere really obvious, and if you get a broomstick or something, you can turn them off, because if it's just a case of you've just burnt a bit of toast, you don't have to have it going on for the full, you know, 30 seconds or whatever. You can turn them off. But we also have CO2 detectors, so those are more they'll be closer to your boiler. And
is this what we mean by carbon monoxide when you say CO?
Yes, that's the one. So obviously, if you've burnt the toast or if your house is on fire, you know it's very hot. There's smoke, but the carbon monoxide is you can't pick it up, and it will kill people if it builds up, you know, to enough of a quantity in a place. So those ones will be typically placed next to the boiler where there might be a bit of a gas leak or something like that.
And I think your point there is so important there, Sylvan. I was just going to say that.
Monoxide leak.
Yeah, so sorry, Sylvan. I was just that point you made was so powerful. I think I was speaking to somebody in the co-op a while ago, and they were talking about, they thought they'd heard an alarm go off in somebody else's property. If, for example, that the carbon monoxide one, which, as you say, you won't smell it, act quickly. You know, it's really quickly. I just want to underscore that powerful point that you made. You know, don't you really need to act quickly on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we've got here some other bits and pieces. Some people in the co-op might be lucky enough to have a garden. Keep the back of your home and the tools secure. You don't want them stolen or dangerous things happening. Chemicals, keep them out of the reach of kids and so on. Fire exits. I guess this is a really important one, Sylvan, for people to know where they are. And they always say, you know, depending on the nature of your property, you know, what would be your fire plan, your escape routes, and do not block those, especially if you're in a communal building. Get to know, think about just how would you get out of the house in the event of a fire. Is really, really, really important to think about how would you get out of your house in the event of a fire. And maybe this is we'll come on to it at the moment. Clutter-free, avoid clutter. This can be a big fire and health risk. Keep it clean for yours and other people's well-being. If you're going away, get a trusted neighbor to perhaps look out for your house, and perhaps share keys with somebody you know who's trusted nearby. That can be one of the good things about BHC. But I think the one thing I wanted to bring you back on in Sylvan really briefly is this thing about some of our properties that are communal. For all sorts of reasons, keeping those spaces clear of things like bikes or this or that is really important, because the risks, be it boxes or whatever, there could be fire risks, there could be risks, people mobility or problems and so on. Keep those spaces clear.
Yeah, no, exactly. In fact, this isn't just a policy, a BHC policy. It's actually a legal requirement. It is illegal to have cluttered hallways. The fire brigade needs to have access, very quick access to all the properties. If you have bikes and boxes in your hallway and the hallway fills up with black smoke, the fire services are trying to get in, they trip over, they could injure themselves or whatever. But worse, you know, they also take longer to get to people in their properties, and those few seconds can be vital. It could be life or death to, you know, getting someone out of a property or not. So yeah, it's a legal requirement to have all communal hallways completely clear. So obviously there are, if you have loads of stuff they can also catch fire.
That's so.
But a firefighter explained this to me. They said quite often a house on fire will fill up with very thick smoke and you can't see anything. So that's why it's so important to keep those edges.
Really powerful, really powerful advice. And of course, those fire exits also, and especially with things that are marked as such, do not block them. I'm just going to share one last slide before we stop the recording for those people who are watching at home. We put a slide here, but just a couple of other issues that if you're having a contractor in your home, it might be that you're getting other work done, small bits and pieces that isn't necessarily, you might be wanting to do a few simple aesthetic things that you're wanting to do because it's your choice, rather than something that BHC to pay for. Check for references and testimonials and make sure that they have got insurance. That's really important. For all of our contractors, we make sure we've got all of those things in place. It's really, really important. You don't want to get yourself in real trouble. And this one, I know, Sylvain, you'll have strong views on. Having work done, if you're having something significant done, you have to let BHC know. First of all, otherwise there could be all sorts of challenges. Do you want to say just a quick word about that before we stop the recording for this section?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you want to get something done in your property, sometimes we get requests. Somebody is asking to knock down one of the walls because they've got an old cupboard in their kitchen that they don't need, and they want to expand their kitchen a little bit. And all of those things, anything like that, which is not a repair, let's just say, BHC, we'll always look at it and analyze it, and we might say, well, actually this is actually going to enhance the property, so yes, but you have to do it at your own cost, and you have to use our contractors. If another contractor is to be used, then the maintenance committee will make a decision on that. But every time anytime anything happens in one of our properties, it has to go through maintenance first. Never ever just go off and do something, because there could be massive repercussions down the line. So that's very, very important. The first point of call is always the maintenance officer, and then he will pass that on to the committee, and then it will be discussed. And most of the time things are approved. I don't know, it just has to go through the right channels.
Yeah, a really, really powerful point. And I think it's a lovely moment to perhaps mention that, to give a shout out for, if you are interested in this stuff, do join a committee, or join, if you're particularly interested in this, join maintenance committee. And a lot of work is on things like policies and procedures. And I know you're just going to come back in there, Sylvain, so I'll just...
Yeah. And then another thing as well, which is worth people knowing, is if you make improvements to a property, so you have to be aware that once you move, so you might be transferring to another property within BHC, or you might leave BHC altogether, everything stays in that property. Even if you've paid for it yourself, it's that you can't take it away with you. So that's another thing worth considering. Very important point to make. And before we move away, I did have a little bit of a tip, actually, for we were talking about condensation and molds. If you have got some in a corner of your bathroom or something like that, obviously we said, it shows that there's a lack of ventilation somewhere, or there might be a leak somewhere. But one way to treat black molds, which are quite harmful, people usually spray them with bleach, which is also harmful to the environment, very bad, especially if you have respiratory conditions and so on. I found a really, really good recipe. Instead of using harmful chemicals, you use, so the recipe is 1 liter of household white vinegar. So this is not your white wine vinegar used for your salad dressing. This is one that's really high in acidity. You buy it from a hardware store. So 1 liter of household cleaning white vinegar and 10 drops of tea tree oil. That's the recipe. Shake it up, put it in a spray bottle. You spray it onto the mold, and that will kill it.
You know what, that's a brilliant moment, Sylvain, to say that if people have got any other ideas or topics that they want to do for us to do, because we've done some a series of you and your home tips, including this point 3 here, one about around mice. So I think that's really good, really good. Just before we wrap up from the recording, I just wanted to just mention and actually make that BHC and maintenance are doing a lot of work around kind of green issues. In fact, there's a green working group. And so even on topics where we talked about things like boilers and so on, lots of people are now concerned about, you know, how it is we can be more sustainable, how it is that we can be more green. And there's I just want to give a big shout out for the work that maintenance is doing, and which I know both yourself, Sylvain, and Manu, you're both on currently, looking at all sorts of things about how we can be more green across the board. Many of these things are longer term things, but I just wanted to flag that up. So I don't know if you just want to say a brief word about some of the things that you're keen to be looking at in the longer term.
Okay, so well, the first thing we've done is upgraded our windows. We are we've insulated most of the roofs as well, which are the two areas where you lose a lot of heat in the property. Next up, we'll be looking at wall insulation. So that's a really major thing as well. So that will be one way of making our properties more energy efficient. And then also the added bonus to our tenants will be that they will save on their energy bills. But we're making good progress with that. And we've set up the Green Working Party as well to look at all of those areas. You know, we've looked in the past at solar panels, things like that. Another area we're looking into is different alternative types of heating, because at the moment we're all on gas boilers. There are alternatives. It's just trying to find which ones are going to work for us is also quite a tricky issue. The other thing is there are sometimes things that we can do, but we seem to be we're always ahead of government policy, and we could spend 5 years upgrading certain things and spending a lot of money, but a lot of the technologies are in their infancy, and like hydrogen boilers, for example, you know, that's something that we're looking into. But it's quite complicated. So there's a lot of discussion around that. We're really interested in looking forward to the future, what we can do, but also it's about finding out where the grants are, you know, because there are some available. So yeah, we're looking into all of those things.
So again, I guess that's a lovely opportunity. If you're interested, if you're passionate about this, perhaps join maintenance, get involved, let us know, have suggestions. And so by way of summary for the recording, please take pride in taking care of your home. If there are problems, contact the co-op, not a contractor, and emergency, utilize those key contacts that we mentioned before. So those of you who are joining us at home online, we're going to bid you farewell. Everyone, do you want to wish anyone who's watching this online, who've been watching it, let's give them a wave. If you're watching us here online, we're going to say farewell to you, and we're going to stop the recording in just one moment for those people who are watching the recording.